I ordered champagne for the entire office. The expensive kind because some moments demand extravagance. When the board calls you at 7 a.m. on a Tuesday to offer you the CEO position you've worked toward for 12 years, you don't celebrate with Prosecco. To Tinsley! Olive raised her glass, her eyes crinkling with pride. The youngest CEO in Meridian's history, and the first woman to break that ceiling. The conference room erupted in cheers. I soaked in the moment, letting the validation wash over me. For once, I didn't deflect the praise or minimize my accomplishment. I'd earned this. All those missed birthdays, canceled vacations, and 3 a.m. strategy sessions had finally paid off. Speech, someone called out. I straightened my blazer and cleared my throat. I promised to keep this short because we have actual work to do. Laughter rippled through the room. When I started here, I was just trying to survive. My parents were gone, I had student loans crushing me, and I just needed to prove, to myself more than anyone, that I could stand on my own. My voice caught unexpectedly. I hadn't planned to get emotional, but 12 years of grinding suddenly compressed into this single moment. But you all became more than colleagues. You became my family. I raised my glass. So this isn't my achievement, it's ours. And I promise to lead Meridian with the same dedication and heart that each of you brings every day. The door swung open as I finished. Sarah strode in, fashionably late as always, her smile dazzling. My best friend since business school, the one person who'd seen me through every professional battle and personal crisis. Sorry I'm late. She breezed in, accepting a glass from Peyton. Traffic was a nightmare, but I wouldn't miss celebrating my best friend for anything. I moved to hug her, but she stepped toward the center of the room instead, tapping her glass with a pen. While we're all gathered, I actually have an announcement of my own. Sarah's voice carried that musical quality that always commanded attention. I wanted Tinsley to hear this from me personally. Something in her tone made my stomach tighten. The board called me this morning. Her smile widened. They've appointed me as Meridian's new CEO, effective immediately. The champagne turned sour in my mouth. I stared at her, waiting for the punchline, the just kidding that never came. There must be some mistake, I said, my voice unnaturally calm. The board called me this morning, Chairman Elliott himself. Sarah's expression shifted to something resembling pity. Oh, Tins, that was the preliminary call. They wanted your input as a valued executive, but the final decision came down after further deliberation. The room had gone completely silent. Faces turned from Sarah to me, then awkwardly away. That's not possible, I said, louder now. I have the offer letter. I've already accepted. You received a draft, Sarah corrected, her voice gentle but firm. If you check your email, you'll see the board's final communication. They felt my connections with Westridge Investments would better position Meridian for the merger. My phone was already in my hand, email open. There it was, a message from Chairman Elliott sent 30 minutes ago. Subject line, CEO position update. I scanned it quickly, each word a fresh cut. After careful consideration, alternative candidate, appreciate your continued contributions, regret any miscommunication. You knew. The realization hit me like physical pain. You knew they were considering you when I told you about my call this morning. Sarah's smile faltered slightly. Business is business, Tins. You've always been brilliant at operations, but leadership requires political savvy. The board needs someone who can navigate the social aspects of the role. Social aspects? I echoed, disbelief making my voice shake. You mean your father's golf buddies on the Westridge board? She shrugged, not even bothering to deny it. Connections matter, always have. 12 years of friendship. Countless nights spent on her couch when work ran late. I'd been the maid of honor at her engagement party last month. And all that time. You let me plan this celebration, I said, the pieces clicking together. You knew they were going to give you the position, and you let me order champagne and invite everyone. I thought it would be easier this way, Sarah said, glancing around the room. A chance for a smooth transition. We're still a team, Tins. Roslyn from marketing slipped out of the room. Others followed, murmuring excuses. Only Olive remained beside me, her hand on my arm. Congratulations, Sarah, Peyton said, breaking the awful silence. When do you want to schedule the formal announcement? And just like that, they moved on. Sarah began outlining her vision while I stood frozen. champagne glass still in hand, watching my future dissolve. I set down my glass with deliberate care and walked out. In the hallway, tears blurred my vision, but I refused to let them fall until I reached the privacy of the restroom. Olive followed me in. Tinsley. She planned this, I whispered, gripping the edge of the sink. She used our friendship to climb over me. What are you going to do? Olive asked. I met my own gaze in the mirror, watching as something hardened behind my eyes. 12 years of work, a lifetime of proving myself, all stolen in an instant by the one person I trusted most. I wiped away a single tear that had escaped. This isn't over. 3 days. I'd spent 3 days in my apartment with the blinds drawn, ignoring calls and living on delivery food I barely tasted. My laptop remained closed. What was the point? 12 years of work, and Sarah had erased it all with a smile. I scrolled through our text history. Years of inside jokes, late-night pep talks, celebration emojis. Had any of it been real? The last message from her sat unanswered. We should talk when you're ready. This doesn't have to change anything between us. Didn't have to change anything? She'd stolen my life and expected what? That we'd still meet for Sunday brunch? My doorbell rang. I ignored it. It rang again, followed by persistent knocking. I know you're in there, Tinsley. Olive's voice called through the door. I brought food from that Thai place you like. Open up or I'm using the emergency key. I shuffled to the door in the same sweatpants I'd worn since leaving the office. Olive took one look at me, and her expression shifted from concern to alarm. Jesus, Tinsley. She pushed past me, setting down bags of food. When's the last time you showered? I shrugged. What day is it? Friday. She opened my blinds and I winced at the sunlight. You've missed 3 days of work. Does it matter? I'm clearly dispensable. Olive turned to face me, hands on hips. So that's it? Sarah wins because you're hiding in your apartment feeling sorry for yourself? What exactly am I supposed to do? My voice cracked. She had this planned for months. The board already made their decision. And you're just going to accept that? Olive began unpacking containers of food. The Tinsley I know would fight. Fight how? Sarah's father practically owns Westridge. She's been working angles I didn't even know existed. Then find new angles. Olive shoved a plate of pad thai toward me. Eat. You can't think when you're starving. I took a reluctant bite, suddenly realizing how hungry I was. As I ate, Olive moved around my apartment, picking up discarded takeout containers and opening windows. You know what bothers me most? I said between bites. I keep replaying every conversation, every confidence I shared with her. All those times I told Sarah about my ideas, my strategies. I set down my fork as realization dawned. Oh my God. What? The Westridge merger. 3 months ago, I told Sarah about finding inconsistencies in their financial projections. She dismissed it, said I was overthinking. I stood up, pacing now. What if she's been feeding them information? What if she's been undermining me all along? Olive watched me carefully. That's a serious accusation. Is it? She let me plan a celebration for a job she knew I wouldn't get. What wouldn't she do? My phone buzzed with a text. Sarah again. The team misses you. When are you coming back? I threw my phone onto the couch. She's texting like nothing happened, like we're still friends. Maybe that's your advantage, Olive said quietly. She thinks you're broken. I stopped pacing. What? Sarah expects you to either quit or come crawling back, tail between your legs. She doesn't expect you to fight. For the first time in days, I felt something other than despair, a flicker of determination. Even if I wanted to fight, where would I start? Olive pulled out her phone. With this. She showed me an email. I forwarded this to myself before I left that day. It's the original offer letter they sent you. I scanned it quickly. This doesn't help. Sarah already explained it away as a draft. Look at the signature block. That's not how drafts are sent. And look at the timestamp. It came after the board's final meeting, not before. My heart began to race. So they did officially offer me the position. And then rescinded it after Sarah got involved. Olive's eyes narrowed. The question is, what did she tell them to change their minds so dramatically? I sat down at my laptop, opening it for the first time in days. I need to find out what happened in those hours between my offer and the reversal. You'll need allies, Olive warned. Sarah has the board's ear now. Rosalind from marketing, I said, remembering how she'd looked at Sarah during the announcement. She's never liked Sarah. And Peyton, he's always played both sides. He might know something. What about Reggie in legal? He's been asking about you. I glanced up, surprised. Reggie? We barely talk. He's been concerned. Said something about the legality of rescinding an accepted offer. I hadn't considered the legal angle. I'll talk to him Monday. So you're coming back? Olive smiled. Yes. I straightened my shoulders. But not as the defeated ex-almost CEO. If Sarah wants to play dirty, she's about to learn I can get my hands dirty too. As Olive left, I opened my email, searching for any communications about the Westridge merger. Something caught my eye. An email chain I'd been copied on by mistake, quickly recalled by the sender. I'd never opened it, until now. The subject line read, Re Valdez Concerns, Containment Strategy. My hands trembled as I clicked. There it was, proof that Sarah had been working against me for months. The email mentioned neutralizing Valdez's objections to the merger and alternative leadership more aligned with Westridge's vision. I stared at the screen, ice replacing the blood in my veins. This wasn't just opportunism. This was calculated betrayal. Monday morning, I walked into Meridian with my head high and a knot in my stomach. The office felt different, like walking into your home after a break-in. Everything looked the same but felt violated. Tinsley! Peyton spotted me first, his surprise poorly concealed. Good to have you back. I smiled tightly. Wouldn't miss work for the world. Whispers followed me to my office. My same office, thankfully, though I half expected to find my things in boxes. Inside, I found a handwritten note on my desk. Tins, let's grab lunch and catch up. So glad you're back. S. I crumpled it and tossed it in the trash. The familiar gesture felt hollow now, knowing what I knew. I opened my computer and began methodically searching for more evidence of Sarah's manipulation. A knock at my door interrupted me. Reggie from legal stood there, his tall frame awkward in my doorway. Hey, he said quietly. Got a minute? I gestured to the chair across from me. Reggie and I had worked together on contracts for years, but our relationship had always been strictly professional. I'd never noticed how his eyes crinkled at the corners when he was concerned. Olive mentioned you might need some legal perspective, he said, closing the door behind him. I'm not sure I'm ready to pursue legal action, I replied carefully. I'm not here as Meridian's lawyer right now. He leaned forward. This is off the record, as a colleague who respects your work. I studied him, weighing my options. What do you know about the CEO appointment process? I know the board voted unanimously for you initially. I drafted the offer letter myself. My heart skipped. Then what happened? Reggie hesitated. There was an emergency board meeting the next morning. I wasn't included, but I know Sarah presented something that changed their minds. Do you know what? He shook his head. But I can tell you this. Rescinding a formally accepted offer is legally questionable. If you wanted to challenge it, you'd have grounds. At what cost? My career would be over. Maybe. His eyes met mine. Or maybe you'd expose something the board needs to know before this merger goes through. I was about to respond when my phone buzzed with a text from Rosalind. Need to talk. Women's restroom, 3rd floor, now. I have to go, I told Reggie. Thank you for this. He nodded. Be careful, Tinsley. Sarah has more allies than you think. The 3rd floor restroom was rarely used. Perfect for a private conversation. Rosalind was checking under stall doors when I arrived. We're clear, she said, locking the main door. I don't have much time. What's going on? Sarah's called an all-hands meeting for this afternoon. She's announcing accelerated merger plans with Westridge. My stomach dropped. That's too fast. We haven't completed due diligence. Exactly. Rosalind lowered her voice. And I found something when preparing the marketing materials. The numbers don't add up. Westridge is overstating their client base by at least 30%. The same discrepancy I found months ago, I murmured. I told Sarah about it. Well, she's buried it. The board presentation omits all those details. Rosalind handed me a flash drive. This has the original data sets before they were cleaned up for the board. I stared at the tiny device. Why are you helping me? Rosalind's expression hardened. 2 years ago, I was up for the marketing director position. Sarah told me in confidence that I shouldn't apply, that I wasn't ready. I later found out she'd recommended someone else while pretending to support me. Another victim of Sarah's manipulations. Thank you for this. Be smart about how you use it, she warned. Sarah's already framing you as emotionally unstable after your absence. Perfect. Not only had Sarah stolen my position, she was now undermining my credibility. I spent the next 2 hours analyzing the data Roslyn had provided. The discrepancies were worse than I'd initially thought. Westridge wasn't just inflating numbers, they were hiding significant debt. This merger would be disastrous for Meridian. At 2 p.m., I slipped into the back of the conference room for Sarah's all-hands meeting. She stood at the front, radiant in a power suit, outlining her vision for Meridian's future. The Westridge merger represents a transformative opportunity, she was saying. Their client portfolio complements ours perfectly, and their financial strength will allow us to expand into new markets. I felt sick listening to her sell this lie. When she opened the floor for questions, I couldn't stop myself. What about the discrepancies in Westridge's reported client base? I asked, my voice carrying across the room. Sarah's smile didn't waver, but her eyes flashed with warning. There are no discrepancies, Tinsley. We've done extensive due diligence. Then why does their SEC filing show a 30% smaller client base than what's in your presentation? A murmur went through the room. Sarah laughed lightly. I think you're looking at outdated information. Perhaps we should discuss this privately after the meeting. I'm looking at their filing from last week, I persisted, holding up my tablet, and it shows significant debt that isn't reflected in our merger analysis. The room went silent. Sarah's expression hardened. Tinsley is understandably emotional given recent events. I assure you all, the merger numbers have been thoroughly vetted by our team and the board. As people filed out after the meeting, Sarah cornered me. What the hell was that? She hissed. That was me doing my job, I replied evenly. Something you might try sometime. You're embarrassing yourself. Her voice was cold. This pathetic attempt to undermine me needs to stop. Or what? She stepped closer. Or I'll have to remind the board why they chose me instead of you. Your history of emotional instability, your lack of strategic vision. My history of what? I stared at her, realization dawning. What exactly did you tell them about me? Sarah's smile returned, but it never reached her eyes. Only the truth, Tins. That's all. As she walked away, I stood frozen, finally understanding. This wasn't just about the CEO position or the merger. Sarah had systematically dismantled my reputation behind my back for years. This fight had just become much more personal. You need to decide what matters more, revenge or your career. Olive set her coffee down with a finality that made me wince. We were at a cafe 3 blocks from the office, far enough that we wouldn't run into colleagues. Why can't I have both? I asked, stirring my untouched latte. Because Sarah has positioned you perfectly. Every move you make against her looks like bitter jealousy. Olive leaned forward. That stunt in the meeting yesterday, it made you look desperate. It wasn't a stunt. The Westridge numbers are fabricated. I believe you. But you presented it like a personal attack, not a business concern. I sank back in my chair, the truth of her words stinging. So I'm supposed to sit back and watch Sarah tank the company with a fraudulent merger while destroying my reputation? No. You're supposed to be smarter than she expects. Olive's eyes softened. Tinsley, I've known you for 8 years. You're brilliant at strategy when it's business. But this is personal, and it's making you sloppy. She was right. I'd let emotion drive my actions, playing directly into Sarah's hands. What would you do? I asked. Document everything. Build a case methodically, and find out exactly what Sarah told the board about you. I nodded slowly. I need to talk to Peyton. He sits in on all the board meetings. Be careful. Peyton plays all sides. Exactly why he might talk. I checked my watch. I should get back. I have a meeting with Reggie about the Westridge contracts. Olive gave me a knowing look. Just a meeting? What's that supposed to mean? He's been checking on you every day you were out. That's not just professional concern. I felt my cheeks warm. We're colleagues. Mm-hmm. Olive smiled. Just remember, not everyone at Meridian is your enemy. Back at the office, I found Peyton alone in the break room, methodically selecting a tea bag. Earl Grey or English breakfast? The eternal question, I said, keeping my tone light. He startled slightly. Tinsley, didn't see you there. Got a minute to chat? His eyes darted toward the door. I'm actually late for a meeting with Sarah. It won't take long. I lowered my voice. I need to understand what happened with the CEO appointment. Peyton sighed, abandoning his tea. Look, I like you, Tinsley. Always have. But this isn't a good idea. I just want to know what Sarah told the board about me. He hesitated, conflict evident in his expression. She presented a case that you weren't ready for the position, that your personal history made you unsuitable for high-pressure leadership. My blood ran cold. My personal history? Your parents, he said quietly. She suggested that your abandonment issues make you erratic under pressure, that you'd be a liability during the merger. The room seemed to tilt. Sarah had weaponized my deepest pain, the loss of my parents when I was 19, something I'd shared with her during late nights when defenses were down. The nights I'd cried on her shoulder, trusted her with my fears of never being enough, of everyone eventually leaving. That's why they changed their minds, I whispered. Peyton nodded uncomfortably. She had examples, times you supposedly broke down during stressful projects. That never happened. The board believed her. She was very convincing. I felt sick. Thank you for telling me. Tinsley! He grabbed my arm as I turned to leave. Be careful. Sarah's father has connections beyond Westridge. She could make sure you never work in this industry again. The threat should have frightened me. Instead, it crystallized my resolve. I found Reggie waiting in my office, contract drafts spread across my desk. He looked up when I entered, his expression immediately concerned. What happened? You look like you've seen a ghost. I closed the door behind me. Sarah used my parents' death to convince the board I'm emotionally unstable. Reggie's face darkened. That's beyond unprofessional. It's cruel. It's effective, I said, sitting down heavily. Who would want a CEO with abandonment issues? Someone who recognizes that overcoming personal tragedy creates resilience, not weakness. His voice was quiet but firm. The board should know they've been manipulated. They won't believe me over Sarah, not without proof. Then we find proof. He gestured to the contracts. Starting with these, the Westridge merger terms are unusually favorable to them, almost like someone on our side is deliberately undervaluing Meridian. I leaned forward, professional interest momentarily overriding personal hurt. Show me. For the next hour, we pored over the documents, identifying clause after clause that disadvantaged Meridian. Reggie's legal expertise illuminated issues I might have missed, and I found myself genuinely impressed by his thoroughness. This isn't just bad negotiating, I said finally. This is deliberate sabotage. The question is why, Reggie replied. What does Sarah gain by undervaluing Meridian in this merger? A knock interrupted us. Rosalind slipped in, closing the door quickly behind her. You need to see this, she said, handing me her tablet. Sarah just announced her engagement party. It's this Saturday. I stared at the screen. There was Sarah, beaming beside her fiancé Bradley, announcing an intimate celebration at the Westridge Country Club. Look who's on the guest list, Rosalind said, scrolling down. The entire Meridian board was invited, along with the Westridge executives. She's using her engagement party to finalize the merger details, I realized. Away from the office, away from scrutiny. Away from you, Reggie added. You're conspicuously absent from that invitation list. I handed the tablet back to Rosalind, a plan forming in my mind. I need to be at that party. Tinsley, no, Rosalind warned. That's exactly the kind of emotional reaction she's expecting. I'm not going to make a scene, I said, but that party is where everyone with power will be gathered. If I'm going to expose what Sarah's doing, that's my opportunity. Reggie and Rosalind exchanged concerned glances. What? I demanded. Are you sure this is about saving Meridian? Reggie asked carefully. And not about hurting Sarah? The question hit me like a slap. Was I motivated by professional integrity or personal vengeance? The line had blurred so completely I couldn't tell anymore. Does it matter? I finally asked. If the end result is stopping a fraudulent merger? It matters to you, Reggie said simply, and what this does to you matters to me. The unexpected tenderness in his voice caught me off guard. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed with an email notification. From Sarah. Missing your input on the merger team. Let's put our personal issues aside for Meridian's future. Dinner tonight to clear the air? I showed the others. She's trying to neutralize me. Or genuinely extend an olive branch, Reggie suggested. I laughed bitterly. After what Peyton just told me, not likely. What did Peyton say? Rosalind asked. As I explained, their expressions shifted from concern to outrage. That settles it, Rosalind said firmly. We're getting you into that party. I agreed to dinner with Sarah. Know your enemy, as the saying goes. We met at Luciano's, our usual celebration spot. The familiarity felt perverse now, like returning to a childhood home that had been sold to strangers. Sarah was already seated when I arrived, looking perfectly composed in a navy dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent. She stood to hug me. I let her, my body stiff. I'm so glad you came, she said, her smile warm and practiced. I've missed you. Have you? I slid into my seat, declining the wine she'd already ordered for me. I need a clear head tonight. Her smile faltered slightly. Still angry, I see. Not angry, just not interested in pretending. The waiter appeared, saving us from the tension. We ordered, she got her usual salmon. I chose something different from my regular order. Even that small deviation felt like a declaration. I meant what I said in my email, Sarah began once we were alone. I value your input on the merger. No one understands Meridian's operations like you do. Interesting pivot, I replied. Yesterday I was emotionally unstable. Today I'm indispensable. She sighed. That was unfortunate timing. You blindsided me in that meeting. Like you blindsided me with the CEO announcement? That was business, Tinsley. This merger is transformative for Meridian. The board needed someone with established connections to Westridge. Someone like you, whose father conveniently sits on their board? Sarah's expression hardened momentarily before smoothing back into concern. I know you're hurt, but this self-destructive crusade isn't like you. People are worried. Which people? The board members you told about my abandonment issues? Her fork clattered against her plate. Peyton talked to you. Did you think he wouldn't? Did you think I wouldn't find out how you used my parents' death against me? Sarah leaned forward, voice low. I presented relevant concerns about leadership qualities. That's all. You betrayed my confidence. You took the most painful part of my life and weaponized it. I did what was necessary for Meridian's future. No, I said, my voice steady despite the anger churning inside me. You did what was necessary for Sarah's future. Don't pretend this is about the company. She studied me, calculation replacing pretense. What do you want, Tinsley? A bigger role in the merger? A promotion? Name it, and we can move past this unpleasantness. The casual offer stunned me. She thought I could be bought off, my dignity traded for a title. I want you to withdraw from the Westridge merger, I said. The numbers are fabricated and you know it. Sarah laughed, the sound brittle. That's not happening. The merger proceeds next week after my engagement party. Then I'll take what I've found to the board. With what evidence? The board trusts me, not the emotionally compromised executive who's clearly bitter about losing a promotion. She was right, and we both knew it. I'd need irrefutable proof to overcome the narrative she'd created. This isn't you, Tinsley, she continued, her voice softening. We've been friends for 12 years. Are you really willing to throw that away over a job title? This isn't about the title. It's about you using our friendship to advance yourself while systematically undermining me. That's not— How long? I interrupted. How long have you been planning this? Something shifted in her eyes, a flicker of truth breaking through the performance. Since the Harrington acquisition, she admitted. When you got the credit for the deal, I helped structure. 3 years. She'd been plotting this for 3 years, all while being my maid of honor, my confidant, my supposed best friend. I never took credit for your work, I said quietly. I always acknowledged your contribution. In private, but the board saw you as the rising star. I was just supporting cast. The raw jealousy in her voice was almost shocking. All this time, while I'd trusted her completely, she'd been tallying perceived slights and planning her revenge. We're done here. I stood up, throwing cash on the table for my untouched meal. Tinsley, wait. She grabbed my wrist. Don't do anything you'll regret. My father can make one phone call and end your career anywhere in this industry. I pulled my arm away. Threats now? At least we're finally being honest. Outside, the cool night air did nothing to calm the storm inside me. I walked aimlessly, eventually finding myself at a small park where Sarah and I used to eat lunch when we were both starting out. Before titles and corner offices mattered, before she decided I was competition instead of family. My phone buzzed with a text from Reggie. How did it go? I called him instead of texting back. When he answered, the concern in his voice broke something in me. I told him everything: Sarah's admission, her threats, my helplessness. Where are you? He asked when I finished. Riverside Park. Stay there. I'm coming to get you. 20 minutes later, his car pulled up. I got in without a word, exhaustion suddenly overwhelming me. My place is closer, he said. I'll make coffee and we can figure this out. His apartment was exactly what I expected. Minimalist, orderly, with overflowing bookshelves, the only sign of personality. He made coffee while I sank onto his couch. She's been planning this for years, I said, staring into the mug he handed me. Everything was calculated. Then we need to be equally calculated, he replied, sitting beside me. Sarah's right about one thing. You need irrefutable evidence to take to the board, which I don't have. Not yet, he hesitated, but I might know how to get it. I looked up. How? The engagement party? Bradley, Sarah's fiancé. He works in Westridge's finance department. So? So I play golf with him occasionally. He's mentioned having concerns about some of the company's reporting practices. Hope flickered faintly. You think he'd talk to us? To me, maybe, if I can get him alone at the party. Which I'm not invited to. Reggie's expression turned determined. Then we get you in another way, as my +1. Sarah would spot me immediately. Not if you're working behind the scenes. I go as a guest, you come as staff. The country club is hiring extra servers for the event. The audacity of the plan jolted me out of my despair. You want me to pose as a server at Sarah's engagement party? It gets you in the room. It gives us a chance to find proof. It was risky, potentially humiliating, and absolutely not what a former CEO designate should be doing. It was also our only shot. Okay, I said, newfound determination replacing defeat. Let's do it. Reggie smiled, relief evident in his expression. There she is. I was worried we'd lost you. Lost me? The Tinsley who never backs down from a challenge. His hand covered mine briefly. The one I've always admired. The unexpected touch, the sincerity in his voice, it cut through my emotional armor in a way I wasn't prepared for. For the first time in days, I felt something beyond anger and betrayal. I felt hope. Keep your head down and don't make eye contact with the guests. The catering manager adjusted my bow tie with brisk efficiency. Water glasses stay full, empty plates disappear quickly. Questions? No, ma'am. I balanced the tray of champagne flutes, feeling ridiculous in the server's uniform. The black pants were too long, the white shirt too tight across my shoulders. Good. The first guests arrive in 20 minutes. She moved on to the next server, leaving me alone with my nerves. I'd spent my career climbing to the executive floor, and here I was, back in a service job like during college. The irony wasn't lost on me, but desperate times called for desperate measures, and I was definitely desperate. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from Reggie. Just arrived. Remember the plan? Be careful. The plan seemed simple enough. I'd work the party, staying invisible to Sarah while listening for useful information. Meanwhile, Reggie would corner Bradley and probe for Westridge's financial irregularities. We'd meet at midnight in the coat check room to compare notes. Simple except for the knot of anxiety in my stomach. If Sarah spotted me, my career wouldn't just be derailed, it would be obliterated. The Westridge Country Club ballroom filled quickly. Board members mingled with executives, champagne flowing freely. I kept my gaze lowered, moving through the crowd with practiced invisibility. Champagne, sir? I offered to an older man I recognized as Sarah's father. He took a glass without looking at me. Telling you, once this merger goes through, we'll have salvaged the situation completely, he was saying to another board member. Meridian's client list alone covers our shortfall. I lingered, pretending to arrange my tray. The SEC inquiry won't matter by then? The other man asked. Not once we've consolidated assets. The timing is tight, but more champagne over here, please. A sharp voice cut through my eavesdropping. I turned to find Valerie, Sarah's friend from college, staring at me with narrowed eyes. I nodded and moved away, pulse racing. SEC inquiry? What shortfall needed salvaging? Across the room, I spotted Reggie chatting with Bradley near the bar. Bradley looked uncomfortable, tugging at his collar repeatedly. Reggie caught my eye briefly, giving an almost imperceptible nod. For the next hour, I circulated carefully, collecting fragments of conversations. The picture emerging was disturbing. Westridge wasn't just cooking their books. They were under preliminary investigation by the SEC. The merger with Meridian wasn't a strategic partnership. It was a lifeline for a drowning company. And Sarah knew. She had to know. I was refilling water glasses at a table of Meridian board members when I heard my name. Shame about Tinsley. One of them was saying, she had potential. Sarah made the right call bringing her concerns to us, another replied. Can you imagine if we'd announced Tinsley as CEO, only to have her fall apart during the merger? Still, using her personal tragedy against her seems harsh. Business isn't about being nice, it's about results. And Sarah delivers results. I gripped the water pitcher so tightly my knuckles turned white. Stay invisible, I reminded myself. The mission matters more than your pride. At 11:30, I slipped away to the restroom, needing a moment to collect myself. I splashed cold water on my face, breathing deeply. The door swung open. Sarah walked in, radiant in a silver gown. Our eyes met in the mirror. Time stopped. Tinsley? Her shock quickly transformed into cold fury. What the hell are you doing here? I straightened, abandoning all pretense. Gathering evidence that you're knowingly merging Meridian with a company under SEC investigation. You're insane. She glanced toward the door. And trespassing. I'm calling security. Go ahead, I'll tell them, and everyone at this party, exactly what I've learned tonight. Sarah's hand froze halfway to her clutch. You're bluffing. Westridge is using Meridian to cover financial irregularities. Your father practically admitted it to another board member. Something flickered in her eyes. Not guilt, but calculation. You don't understand what you're talking about. I understand perfectly. You're sacrificing Meridian to save your future father-in-law's company. I'm securing Meridian's future, she hissed. Westridge has temporary cash flow issues, that's all. The merger benefits both companies. That's not what your fiancé thinks. Her eyes widened. What? Bradley has concerns about Westridge's reporting practices. Seems he's been talking to Reggie about them. It was a gamble. I didn't know exactly what Bradley had told Reggie yet. But Sarah's reaction told me I'd hit a nerve. Bradley wouldn't... She stopped, uncertainty crossing her face for the first time. Wouldn't what? Have a conscience? Unlike some people. Sarah stepped closer, voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. Listen carefully. You have exactly one chance to walk away from this. Leave now, keep your mouth shut, and I'll make sure you land somewhere decent after the merger. And if I don't, then I'll destroy you so thoroughly you won't even get hired as a real server. Her smile was glacial. Your choice. The bathroom door opened again. Valerie entered, stopping short when she saw us. Everything okay, Sarah? She asked, eyes darting between us. Fine, Sarah replied smoothly. Just catching up with an old friend who crashed my engagement party. How pathetic is that? Valerie's expression turned to disgusted pity. Security's right outside if you need them. That won't be necessary, I said, moving toward the door. I was just leaving. Sarah caught my arm as I passed. Remember what I said, Tinsley. Last chance. I pulled away and walked out, heart pounding. The plan was compromised. I needed to find Reggie immediately. I spotted him near the coat check, deep in conversation with Bradley. Their expressions were serious, heads bent close together. As I approached, Bradley handed Reggie what looked like a flash drive. Tinsley, Reggie said when he saw me, alarm crossing his face. What happened? Sarah saw me. We need to go. Now. Bradley looked between us, understanding dawning. You're working together. Bradley, I started. Whatever Sarah's told you about the merger. I know, he interrupted. I've known for months. That's why I gave Reggie this. He nodded at the flash drive. It's everything. The real financials, emails about covering up the SEC inquiry, all of it. Why would you help us? I asked, confused. Bradley's expression hardened. Because I'm not marrying someone who would sacrifice hundreds of jobs to save her future father-in-law's reputation. He glanced toward the ballroom. or who would use her best friend's deepest pain against her. Security guards appeared at the ballroom entrance, scanning the crowd. Sarah stood behind them, pointing in our direction. "Go," Bradley urged. "I'll stall them." Reggie grabbed my hand. "Side exit, now." As we slipped out into the night, I realized we'd just crossed a point of no return. Tomorrow, we'd take Bradley's evidence to the board, and Sarah's carefully constructed world would collapse. The thought should have brought satisfaction. Instead, I felt only a hollow certainty that the real battle was just beginning. "They've called an emergency board meeting for 9 a.m. Olive's voice crackled through my phone as I paced Reggie's living room. We'd spent the night analyzing Bradley's files, building an airtight case against the merger. "Did they say why?" I asked, though I already knew. Sarah would be scrambling to contain the damage. "No, but Sarah's been making calls all night. Whatever you did at that party has her spooked." I glanced at Reggie, who was organizing our presentation materials. "We'll be there. Make sure everyone attends." After hanging up, I sank onto Reggie's couch, exhaustion hitting me in waves. What if this backfires? What if they don't believe us? Reggie sat beside me, his shoulder touching mine. The evidence speaks for itself. Bradley's files show clear intent to defraud. Sarah will say I fabricated everything out of jealousy. Then we'll need to be better than that narrative. He hesitated. "Tinsley, I need to ask you something important." "What?" "When you walk into that boardroom, what do you want? Really want?" The question caught me off guard. "Justice, the truth exposed." "Is that all?" His eyes held mine. "Because if this is just about hurting Sarah the way she hurt you, it won't bring you peace." I looked away, uncomfortable with his perception. "You think I'm being vindictive. I think you're human, and I think you deserve better than letting revenge define you." His words settled heavily in my chest. What did I truly want? The CEO position back? Sarah's humiliation? Or something deeper, validation that I wasn't crazy, that my instincts had been right all along? "I want to protect Meridian," I finally said, "and I want to reclaim my reputation. The rest, I don't know." Reggie nodded, seeming satisfied with my answer. "Then let's focus on that." We arrived at Meridian 30 minutes early, finding Olive waiting in the lobby. Her expression was grim. "Sarah's already upstairs with the board," she said, "and she's brought her father." My stomach tightened. She's trying to intimidate them. It's working. Half the board looks terrified. We took the elevator in tense silence. As the doors opened on the executive floor, Reggie squeezed my hand briefly. "Remember why we're here." The boardroom fell silent as we entered. Sarah sat at the head of the table, my rightful place, with her father beside her. Her smile was brittle when she saw me. "Tinsley, this is a closed meeting." "I've invited her," said Chairman Elliott, surprising me. Given the serious nature of the allegations, all parties should be present. Sarah's composure slipped momentarily. "What allegations?" "Perhaps you should tell us," I said, setting my laptop on the table. "About Westridge's SEC investigation, or the fabricated client numbers, or how this merger is actually a bailout for your future father-in-law's failing company." Murmurs rippled around the table. Sarah's father leaned forward, his voice cold. "Those are slanderous accusations." "They're documented facts," Reggie countered, distributing folders to each board member. "Everything is in those packets, including emails between Westridge executives discussing how to hide their financial problems until the merger is complete." "This is absurd," Sarah laughed, but I could see the calculation in her eyes. Tinsley is clearly fabricating evidence because she's bitter about losing the CEO position. "The evidence came from Bradley," I said quietly. Sarah froze. "What?" "Your fiancé provided these files. He's been documenting Westridge's deception for months." The color drained from her face. "That's not possible." "He was at the country club last night," Reggie added. "He gave us everything." Sarah's father stood abruptly. "This meeting is over. Our legal team will address these baseless claims." "Sit down, Richard," Chairman Elliott said firmly. "No one's leaving until we understand exactly what's happening." For the next 30 minutes, Reggie and I walked the board through the evidence. The emails were damning. Explicit discussions about hiding debt, inflating client numbers, and using Meridian's resources to cover Westridge's shortfalls. With each revelation, Sarah's expression hardened. When we finished, Chairman Elliott removed his glasses, looking troubled. Sarah, how do you explain this? It's clearly been manipulated, she insisted. Tinsley has technical skills. She could easily have altered these documents. The metadata proves authenticity, Reggie countered, and Bradley is prepared to testify to their validity. Bradley is confused, Sarah's father interjected. He misunderstood normal business discussions. Then explain this email, I said, projecting a message onto the screen. From you to Sarah, dated 3 months ago. The SEC inquiry is gaining momentum. We need to accelerate the Meridian merger before our Q3 filings. The room went silent. Sarah and her father exchanged glances. You knew, I said, looking directly at Sarah. You knew Westridge was in trouble and you orchestrated this merger to save them, regardless of the cost to Meridian. I was protecting both companies, she replied, her voice steady despite her obvious distress. Yes, Westridge has cash flow issues, but the merger still makes strategic sense. Not when one partner is deliberately deceiving the other, Chairman Elliott said. Sarah, I'm deeply disappointed. What about her? Sarah pointed at me, desperation creeping into her voice. She's emotionally unstable. I told you about her history, her abandonment issues. Yes, let's talk about that, I interrupted, surprising myself with my calm. You told the board I was emotionally unstable because my parents died when I was 19. You used my deepest pain I shared with you in confidence, to undermine me professionally, Sarah faltered. I was concerned about your ability to handle pressure. No, you were eliminating competition. I looked around the table. I've never hidden my past. My parents' death shaped me, but it didn't break me. It taught me resilience, determination, and the importance of integrity, qualities a CEO should have. Several board members nodded. Chairman Elliott's expression softened. The real question, I continued, is what kind of leader deliberately sabotages a colleague using personal trauma? What kind of CEO knowingly enters a fraudulent merger? Sarah stood suddenly, her composure cracking. You have no idea what leadership requires. Sometimes difficult decisions must be made. I was saving 2 companies. You were saving yourself, I replied quietly, at everyone else's expense. This is ridiculous, Sarah's father snapped. We're leaving. The merger agreement is signed. It's too late to stop it. Actually, Chairman Elliott said, there's a material disclosure clause. If Westridge knowingly withheld information about an SEC investigation, the agreement is void. Sarah's face crumpled. You can't do this. It's already done, Chairman Elliott replied. The board will need to vote, but I think our direction is clear. He turned to me. Tinsley, would you and Reggie give us the room? We need to discuss next steps. As we stood to leave, Sarah grabbed my arm. You've ruined everything, she hissed. Are you happy now? I looked at her, really looked at her, and felt an unexpected wave of pity. No, Sarah, I'm not happy, but I am free. In the hallway, surrounded by the curious stares of colleagues, I finally allowed myself to breathe. Whatever happened next, the truth was out. I had reclaimed my voice, my dignity, and my future. And for now, that was enough. The board deliberated for 3 hours. I spent them in my office, alternating between nervous pacing and staring out the window at the city skyline. Reggie brought coffee. Olive stopped by with encouragement. Rosalind texted updates from the executive floor. But mostly, I sat alone with my thoughts. When my phone finally rang, Chairman Elliott's voice was formal. The boardroom, please. 5 minutes. I smoothed my blazer, checked my reflection in the darkened computer screen, and took a deep breath. Whatever their decision, I'd fought with integrity. That would have to be enough. The boardroom had emptied except for Chairman Elliott and 2 other members. No sign of Sarah or her father. Sit down, Tinsley. Chairman Elliott gestured to a chair, not at the head of the table, I noticed, but to his right. We've made several decisions today. I nodded, keeping my expression neutral despite my racing heart. First, we've voided the merger agreement with Westridge. Our legal team is already preparing the necessary documentation. Relief flooded through me. That's the right call. Second, we've accepted Sarah's resignation effective immediately. I blinked, surprised it had happened so quickly. I see. Which brings us to you. He folded his hands on the table. Your actions in uncovering this deception were commendable. However, the manner in which you gathered information, infiltrating a private event, working with a Westridge insider, raises questions about judgment. My stomach sank. They weren't giving me the CEO position back. That said, he continued, your dedication to Meridian's well-being is unquestionable, and your presentation today demonstrated exactly the kind of leadership we need. He slid a folder across the table. Inside was an offer letter, not for CEO, but for Chief Strategy Officer, a newly created position. We're restructuring our leadership approach, he explained. The CEO position will remain open while we conduct a proper search. In the meantime, you'll lead our strategic initiatives, reporting directly to the board. I studied the offer. The compensation was excellent, the responsibilities substantial, but it wasn't what I'd been promised. I appreciate the offer, I said carefully, but I have a counter-proposal. Chairman Elliott raised an eyebrow. We're listening. I accept the CSO position with one condition. I met his gaze steadily. I want to be considered in the CEO search on equal footing with external candidates. No prejudice based on Sarah's claims about my emotional stability. The board members exchanged glances. That's reasonable, Chairman Elliott finally said, but I should be transparent. We're considering a significant restructuring. The CEO role may look very different by the time we fill it. I understand. I just want a fair shot. Then we have a deal. He extended his hand and I shook it firmly. As I left the boardroom, a strange lightness filled me. I hadn't gotten everything I wanted, but I'd secured a path forward, on my terms. Reggie was waiting by the elevators. Well? CSO, I said. Not CEO, but a seat at the table. His smile was warm. They'd be fools not to see what you're capable of. Thank you, I said, suddenly overwhelmed by all he'd risked to help me. For everything. Partners look out for each other. His eyes held mine a moment too long, and I felt that same flutter from his apartment. The elevator doors opened, revealing Sarah. She was carrying a box of personal items, her expression stony. We all froze. Excuse me, she said coldly, trying to step around us. I should have let her pass, should have taken the high road, but something made me reach out and stop the elevator door from closing. Sarah. She looked at me, really looked at me, for the first time in months. Behind her anger, I glimpsed something unexpected. Fear. What do you want, Tinsley? Come to gloat? No. I took a deep breath. I wanted to say I'm sorry it ended this way. She laughed bitterly. Right, you destroyed my career and my engagement, but you're sorry. Bradley made his own choice, and you destroyed your career when you decided to lie to the board. Is that what helps you sleep at night? Nothing helps me sleep at night, I admitted. Not after learning my best friend of 12 years saw me as nothing but competition. Something flickered in her eyes. Regret, maybe, or just calculation. We were never friends, Tinsley. We were two ambitious women in a world that only makes room for one of us at the top. That's not true. I never saw it as a zero-sum game. Then you were naive. She shifted her box. Congratulations on your victory. Enjoy it while it lasts. As she walked away, I felt Reggie's hand on my shoulder. You okay? Yeah, I said, surprised to find it was true. I think I am. Back in my office, I found Olive waiting with a bottle of champagne, the same expensive brand I'd ordered for my ill-fated celebration. Too soon? She asked, seeing my expression. Actually, perfect timing. I grabbed paper cups from my desk. But let's invite Roslyn and Peyton too, and anyone else who stood by me. As Olive went to gather them, I stood alone in my office, the same office where this journey had begun. I'd lost a friend but gained clarity. I hadn't reclaimed the CEO title, but I'd reclaimed something more important, my sense of self-worth. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. It was Bradley. Meeting with SEC investigators tomorrow. Doing the right thing, finally. Thank you for showing me it's possible. I smiled, setting the phone down as my colleagues began filtering in, Reggie among them. He caught my eye across the room, raising an imaginary glass and a private toast. Olive handed me a cup of champagne. Speech? I looked around at these people. Not just colleagues, but allies who had seen my value when I doubted it myself. To truth, I said, raising my cup, and to the battles that show us who we really are. As we drank, I realized something profound. I'd spent 12 years trying to prove I was enough, to Meridian, to Sarah, to myself. But standing here now, I finally understood. I had always been enough. The only person who couldn't see it was me. And that, more than any title or corner office, was the real victory.